Welcome to Checkpoint Coffee, the local gaming podcast. We talk about all topics related to games, gaming, and the games industry. Ramadan Mubarak, and welcome to Checkpoint Coffee by MN Gaming, the Maldives' first gaming podcast. MN Gaming is your local games media, and this is the second episode of our Ramadan special. We'll be doing 4 special episodes of Checkpoint Coffee this Ramadan, and with me today is a very special guest. I would like to introduce you all to indie game dev and local streamer Nemui Ghost. How are you doing this Ramadan?
Hello, and doing good, very good, thank you. It's just been usual Ramadan, just starving until iftar.
Fair enough. All right, so today we are going to be talking about something that I think is very important for the future of gaming. The topic is AI in gaming. But before we dive into this really hot button topic, let's talk about something that we have for you, dear listeners. The MN Gaming Quiz. Now, the MN Gaming Quiz is a new thing that we're trying out this Ramadan, where we're opening up some quiz questions with a chance to win some prizes, right? But I gotta make a disclaimer, this is only open to our Maldivian listeners, at least for the first time. We're just trying to see, test out the waters and see how well this thing goes. Now, the way it's gonna work is that we're gonna ask a multiple choice question about gaming. And from the people who give correct answers, we will pick a lucky winner to give an MVR 500 gift card once a week this Ramadan. To take part, you must join our Discord server, link in the description below, go to the MN Gaming Quiz channel and cast your vote in the poll. The poll will be open for 1 week, right? So anyway, that being said, let's get into this week's question. Here we go. Who or what was introduced in Fortnite's first ever collab? The first answer, A, is John Wick. B, the Infinity Gauntlet. C, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi. Or D, a lightsaber. Let me repeat that one more time. Who or what was introduced in Fortnite's first ever collab? A, John Wick. B, the Infinity Gauntlet. C, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi. Or D, a lightsaber. Now, that is the question. We'll get back to it a few more times during this episode to remind you guys. Before we go on with our show, I think that it would be a really good idea to actually do the announcement of last week's winners. Now, if you see this on the screen right now, these are the folks who took part in the quiz and also got the answer correct. So first of all, a big congratulations to all of y'all. And now we're going to be doing a little bit of a lucky draw to see who wins. Best of luck to all the participants who got the answer right. With that, Mika, spin the wheel. Ooh, I'm excited. I wonder who's gonna get it.
Let's see.
And the lucky winner is... Oh, let's go! Clim Hazard! A Final Fantasy VII reference, I believe. Congratulations, Clim Hazard. We will attempt to contact you through our server, but if you also see this, feel free to drop us a DM as well and we will get you sorted. Congratulations, Clim Hazard, for being the first winner of the first week of MN Gaming Quiz for Ramadan. Now, Nemui Ghost, are you ready to really get into the topic at hand today?
Oh yeah, of course. Let's go ahead.
All right, let's begin. Now, Nemui Ghost, I want to start our discussion tonight by talking about the use of AI or the potential use of AI in game development, right? So I'm going to start off by throwing you a question. What do you think are some areas in game development that exists right now that could actually benefit from a little assistance from AI?
Okay, so how AI can be used in assisting game development? Right off the top of my head, I can say that it helps out when it comes to the coding and scripting aspects of game development. So let's say you're trying to figure out, like, you want to implement a new feature into the game. but you just can't wrap your head around where to start, right? So
Hmm.
you could actually ask the any sort of AI model, ChatGPT, for example, what you want to do, and then ChatGPT will do its best to provide you with a code that you can use for it. Now, of course, this specific code that ChatGPT gives you, it's not going to work. Like the code has to be made specifically for your game. You can't just copy paste it as it is, but
Ah.
you can change it up yourself so that it does work. And even if you don't do that, just simply reading the code that ChatGPT gives you will give you an idea of how you can implement, how you can code the same thing to implement into your game. Right?
So this already answers one of the potential questions I was going to have about it, which is that, like, can you really make a game out of patchwork code you find on random chat softwares and AI generative, platforms? And I guess the answer is no.
No. Yeah, let's say there was actually someone that did a pretty neat experiment with this where he tried to make the game Flappy Bird using only ChatGPT's code, right?
Hmm.
And when he basically asked ChatGPT for the code to make it, some of the code that ChatGPT provided were working right out of the box, but a lot of them had a lot of mistakes, and this person had to ask ChatGPT to amend these mistakes uh, quite a few times until it finally worked. So while like he did actually make a game using ChatGPT's code, him had as a game developer had the knowledge required to tell ChatGPT to basically find the mistakes that ChatGPT made and tell it to correct it.
Right. Okay. So, in this scenario, what you're describing is AI used as a potential tool to bridge some of the gaps, right?
Yes.
Now, what about the idea that AI could potentially replace programmers or make programming more approachable to, like, outsiders, newbies, or laymen? What do you think about this idea? It's something that people discuss from time to time.
I don't think we're at that point where AI can straight up replace programmers. Like, I think uh, that's not going to happen for a very long time because,
Hmm.
the kind of the technical skills that a programmer needs and like the kind of problem solving you need in the moment is not something AI can replicate at the moment. But
Hmm.
it does definitely make coding and programming much more approachable to laymen. Now, there's already uh, systems out there that allow people that don't know how to write a single line of code to create their own games. One being Unreal Engine's blueprint system, right? You don't need to know coding, but you can make your own game out of it. It's just that knowing coding is definitely better.
What is this blueprint system? Maybe me and some of the viewers at home might not exactly be too familiar with the game engine. Can you let us know a little bit about it?
So it's basically like a set of instructions. Like, say, the developers of Unreal Engine basically made a uh, several nodes of instructions that you would normally have to code in yourself. For example, let's say you want a character to be able to jump when you press the spacebar button, for example, right? This is
Right.
something you'd normally have to code yourself. But Blueprint system basically has like all of this code written into like a block that you can see visually on the screen. So all you have to do is sort of drag and drop this block of code onto your screen and sort of connect a node to it to your character, right? So that way you can
Okay,
like
so this character will do this action with this particular
when
interaction.
when this button is pressed, right? You don't have to
Hmm.
write any code. You just gotta like do it visually on the screen, right?
Kind of like making a little flow chart or something, is it?
Yes, it's exactly like that. So this does let people who aren't able to code at all make their own games. It's just that if you do know coding, you have a bit more control over it, right? So
Hmm.
this like combined with AI being able to like help you write your code, and also AI can be used to like teach people how to code, definitely makes coding more approachable and would make training aspiring game developers a lot easier.
So that is coding. Now, are there other aspects of development that you think that could use some touch of the AI, or could use some touch from AI, or do you think that are already being used? Now, I'm going to be leaving art and enemy behavior for later points. So aside from those, anything that you think is a place where AI is being used or could be used?
There is another place that AI is being used currently. It is when it comes to the optimization of games, right? So there's
Do you
this
mean
new,
optimization for like different platforms?
uh, not just that, when there's this new thing, so it's called AI frame generation, which was something that was introduced around the time and the NVIDIA 40 series GPUs came, not introduced, but sort of popularized around that time. So it's basically using AI to sort of generate artificial frames in between two real frames. So if your game is, say, running at a certain frame, say 60 FPS, right, you can actually create artificial frames in between that look almost as good real as like the actual frames. So this will sort of boost your frame rate artificially. And the current level of AI upscaling is enough to make the difference between these real frames and artificial frames almost like identical, right? Like you can't tell the difference with your naked eye.
So this is kind of like how in Monster Hunter Wild there are like frames being generated, something like that.
Yeah. Like Monster Hunter Wilds is a game that currently has a lot of performance issues on PC. So a lot of players are using like AI frame generation to sort of bypass this and play the game normally.
Speaking of AI in developing games, another area where you see a lot of AI use is the generative AI use in art. Whether we're talking about art itself, we're talking about character design, we're talking about the music, we're talking about assets or environments. More and more, we're hearing stories about games which use AI in its development. Now, one of the games that immediately comes to my mind is that Splatoon-like game called Foam Stars. Foam Stars, I believe the majority of the assets are actually done by people. It's just that there happens to be this kind of collectible, which are these music albums, and the album art is done by AI. And I believe that there are a lot of other games that are incorporating AI into it more directly as well. So I'm going to throw this question to you, Nemui. Like, what do you think about the role of generative AI in the art side of games?
Well, there's definitely a lot of ethical questions surrounding the use of generative AI, right? Because especially the AI is trained by using other people's art that they did not consent to or pay for. So it's kind of like bordering on. It's pretty much art theft at that point, right? But there are definitely I would say like ethical ways to use it that doesn't harm anyone. So if all of the art is say done by you, right? You drew all of the character models, all the sprites, all the designs and everything. And let's say you just wanted to use all this artwork you drew and make like a poster out of it, right? I think like using only that to train an AI to make a little poster and make some edits of its own can definitely save time that way. But at the end of the day, I still think it would be questionable, right? If you use someone else's work, so long as it's your own work, I think that's completely fine.
Now, something that a lot of generative AI supporters like to say is, you can actually get to the result really quickly. You don't have to spend a lot of time working on repetitive tasks. Now, when it comes to like digital art, right? A lot of artists seem to be pushing back against this because their thinking is that the process is also part of what they enjoy about art. But when we bring it into the realm of video games, right? Imagine that there's a video game where you have like little assets for, let's say, potion bottles, right? Like creating and coloring like potion bottles in hundreds of different colors is something that somebody even at some point would have had to do manually. Like, what are your thoughts on bringing generative AI into something like this?
Um,
The repetitive creatives aspect.
yeah, definitely that's something where it can be useful. and I don't think that should really harm anyone. When you use AI to like make stuff, even if it is your own, there's also like another bad point where it kind of does become easy to tell the difference between if someone used AI to create something and also like, or if you actually put their heart into making something nice, right? So the quality does dip if you rely on it too much. But yes, to your point, like in this situation of like taking one like potion bottle Sprite and coloring it in like 100 different shades, like yeah, that's like tedious work, right? So I feel like that's like a good example of when it would be okay to use AI for art in video games.
This is something that actually came into my mind because I thought, hey, making video games is actually sometimes very repetitive work. And if some of those corners can be sanded off, perhaps that's not necessarily a negative, right?
Yeah.
Now, music is another controversial area where AI is used. Like, what are your thoughts here?
Well, so far out of all the game development I've done, I've never really worked with the music or like the synthesizing of much. So I can't really say much on this topic, but I think it would be like similar to like graphical design, the AI used in graphical design, except with the difference where I don't really see how creating music can get repetitive. Like I don't see like a scenario where like the 100 potion bottle is example you used, right? I don't see a scenario where that can be applied in music, right?
True. To me, this is the thing where I feel like maybe it's better if we don't dabble in AI personally. And
I
the number
agree.
one reason for that is because a lot of game composers, they have skill sets that are very unique to them. And I think that if you are the kind of person who pays attention to video game soundtracks and thinks about the people who composes them, they really bring their A game into this stuff. They really know what they're doing. And I think that like they should not have their prospects be taken away from them just because you can make an all right like piece of music using generative AI. I think the work they put into their craft, their game, so to speak, is very worthwhile and it is worth preserving. It's one of those things where I would feel a little offended if, let's say, Mick Gordon, the former composer of Doom, was replaced by an AI. That would hurt. Or Nobuo Uematsu, or let's say Masayoshi Soken from Final Fantasy series got replaced by AI. Even if this AI studied their previous works, I think that would still kind of rub me the wrong way.
Yeah, I agree. Like I can't actually like see any reason that you would use AI for music generation, like, and still for it to still just be like ethical, you know, because there really is no repetitive process that you use AI as a tool to like shorten, right? You got to take your time with this kind of thing.
I completely agree with you. Now, on that note, before we move on, once again, I'm going to remind everybody, hey, you guys, the MN Gaming Quiz is still going on, and we're on week 2. So let me just repeat the question one more time in case y'all have forgotten it. The question is, who or what was introduced in Fortnite's first ever collab? A. John Wick. B. The Infinity Gauntlet. C. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi. Or D. A lightsaber. Let me say it one more time. Who or what was introduced in Fortnite's first ever collab? A. John Wick. B. The Infinity Gauntlet. C. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi. Or D. A lightsaber. To take part in the quiz, you have to join our Discord server, link in the description below, and go to the Imming Ramadan quiz channel and cast your vote in the poll. The poll will be open for a week, and this particular quiz is open to our local Maldivian listeners only. Anyway, back to the discussion. All right, so next topic I want to talk about with you, Nemui, is the role of AI in NPC and enemy behavior, right? So the very first time I heard about the term AI in games, people were just talking about it to refer to enemy intelligence in games, enemy AI, right? And the behavior of NPCs who also dynamically respond to you is something that has come a long way. And with things like ChatGPT or other chat-based softwares that respond to you, not even that, but even before that, you had things that responded to you, like Eliza, that word prompt thing. Like, what do you think about the idea of this sort of technology being used to create dynamic NPCs that respond to how whatever you say, or perhaps using it to upgrade enemies to make them more, I guess you could call it, smart?
Now, this is something that is a bit hard to answer because there's like currently, I don't, to my knowledge, there isn't any that you're kind of like AI that is used like similar to like the AI models like ChatGPT that are used in game. When people refer to AI, it's like the same enemy AI, the behavior trees, the finite state machines, and stuff like that, right? But I can definitely see some potential out there to make NPCs change dynamic, like the behaviors change dynamically based on the player's actions or their behaviors. But I don't, I don't see it being as advanced as a lot of people might be imagining it. Aside from the point where one example can be used where an enemy boss that would keep getting smarter and smarter the more you defeat it, and eventually learning the player's moves and patterns, forcing the player to change it, right? I can see
Hmm.
that kind of thing happening, but I don't see a player being able to uh, tell an NPC to do something that would like be completely crazy because the NPC also has to act within the limits of the game world, right?
Hmm.
So there's always going to be that restriction. Where I can see some potential in another area can be is text-based games, right?
Visual
So
novels and such.
not just visual novels, but there are like some games out there that are entirely text-based. So it'll
Hmm.
be like a paragraph of text that will describe like the player's surroundings and stuff to the player, and the player will be given like a bunch of like multiple choice options on as to what they want to do next. And sometimes
Oh,
they'll
okay.
even
Kind of
let
like
that,
choose your adventure, right?
yeah. And sometimes they'll even let the player type, right? Like, I
Hmm.
feel like that kind of game could benefit a lot from this chat GPT style AI. So instead of just being given like a multiple choice question where they have four options, the player could have the freedom to just type in exactly what they want to do, and we'll see what the AI gives the player from there, The narrative,
Oh,
the AI could narrate something to the player.
that's actually very interesting that you say that, because back in the day of like PC games first being a thing,
Hmm.
some of the more popular games that were text based were actually quite like that, right? It just so
Hmm.
happened that instead of giving multiple choice, they let you type whatever, and there were certain terms that the game would respond to.
Hmm.
So this could just be like a more developed version of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, me personally, I am of the opinion that if a player wants an NPC who can realistically respond to anything that a player can throw at them and just speak as if it's a real person and have that life to them, video games isn't where they're gonna get it. It's
Hmm.
actually in tabletop role playing games, things like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or, I don't know, Daggerheart or Vampire the Masquerade, whatever it is. These are the kind of games where the person running the game, the storyteller, game master, dungeon master, is playing all the characters. They literally decide what the character says. This is the
Yes.
situation where an intelligence is actually going to be able to respond to you in every possible way. But I
Yes.
think
Yes.
as long as there are games that are scripted, the idea of an infinite NPC is improbable, and I'd argue not worth pursuing personally, because having NPCs that are defined and their role and their function are known is actually, in my opinion at least, kind of a good thing, right?
Yeah, that's the thing that I was mentioning about like no matter how smart you make an NPC, they can still only act within the limitations of the game, right?
They should act within
Yeah.
limitations, is something that I would argue. Now, on the topic of enemies growing smarter, right?
Mhm.
I don't know about this one either, right? Like, because on paper it kind of sounds good, but I feel like, let's say a game series like the FromSoft games, if you have an enemy that always figures out your move and is outwitting you just as much as you're outwitting them, it would eventually reach a saturation point where it would no longer be fun, I feel. Because a big part of difficulty is figuring out their game and then reacting to it because you are more flexible than they are, right? Same goes for Monster Hunter, right? Same goes for like even player versus player, like first person shooters and stuff like that. But I suppose in this case is a little different because you are trying to figure out another person. But that's what game sense is, right? So like if you actually have an enemy that's constantly evolving, doesn't that actually make the game less fun because you can't learn it and actually respond to it?
And you definitely have to like be careful where you implement this. It would definitely not have a place in a game like Dark Souls or Monster Hunter, which, as you said, is all about figuring out the enemy's movement patterns and then countering it and eventually overcoming them, right? Through the lessons you learn from your many failures. But you could have games where this thing can actually become beneficial, right? Something like a first-person shooter like is kind of notorious for having really bad bots, right? So you could actually have AI that can learn from how players play and have like give the players an option to like adjust the difficulty based on like how much they want to learn. So this way, like you can sort of reduce the barrier to entry to games like FPS games, so generally shooters where it's hard to get into. But like if you want to practice on bots, the bots are just so much worse than you, so you can't really improve, right? Whereas if you can play against bots that play similar to how players play, based on because they learned from how other players play, you could eventually train yourself to play against them and eventually real players.
Okay, I see the argument there.
Yep.
Now, that I think is a good place to move on to the next facet of this, and I think this is going to be the last thing we talk about in this session. A look to the future. So, where do you think our current infatuation with artificial intelligence is going to lead in the games industry? Like, is there even a value in manual labor anymore? Like, do you think this is good or bad for the industry? Let's talk big picture. Let's talk future. What do you think?
I feel like the use of AI as a tool is going to be really helpful for the games industry. Many different industries, but it's like even the games industry where you can, like I said, like, use AI to help you solve problems, reduce the learning curve of some difficult skills, and help you speed up and get tedious tasks out of the way. But I feel like with the way a lot of industries, a lot of companies in this industry work, is that most people will look on the generative art side of AI and will end up like using a lot of AI generated assets that don't belong to them to create these games and like make a minimum viable product out of them, right? Which is definitely a bad thing that we should be like, working to avoid. That's my opinion that
I am of a very similar thinking as you, right? I think that more and more I am being forced to accept that there are things that this thing can do, artificial intelligence, that can actually help out. But at the same time, I feel like it incentivizes in a lot of ways some of the worst tendencies that some types of people have. Let's cut all the corners possible. Let's just, reduce costs. Let's just have it be good enough, right? Even when it comes to the most tedious work, I like to think that the best games in the world have a lot of craft, a lot of creativity, and a lot of effort put into it by people who really care about what it is that they do, right? And to kind of undercut that and be like, hey, it's only the results that we care about, I think is culturally affecting us, where we just want the end point and we don't really care about the process. And because we don't care about the process, we don't really care about the people who are involved in the process, bringing us back to the idea that, a lot of layoffs happen and a lot of game studios get shut down and so on and so forth, while players are largely ambivalent to this.
Yeah, definitely. Like the whole thing about a lot of big companies who want to cut corners and make a minimum viable product will eventually kill the quality of game production if we aren't careful about it. You do need to understand that a lot of games, a lot of great games that people love are basically an expression of like the developer. So the art, there's like an art to it, right? And you can't just take that away with AI.
This is something that I think that cannot be fully replaced, and the more they
Okay.
try, the more worried I get.
Mm-hmm.
But on that really sunny note, that brings us to the end of our second Ramadan 2025 podcast episode. We hope you really enjoyed our discussion, and I want to say, Nemui Ghost, thank you so much for joining me today, and I've really enjoyed this conversation with you.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yes, of course, and I hope to collaborate further in the future as well. Now, as for the audience, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us wherever you're catching up with the episode. And just before I let you go, a reminder. We're doing the Emming Gaming Quiz, the second week of it this time around, and here is the question. Who or what was introduced in Fortnite's first ever collab? A. John Wick, B. The Infinity Gauntlet, C. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi, or D. A lightsaber? Let me say it again. Who or what was introduced in Fortnite's first ever collab? A. John Wick, B. The Infinity Gauntlet, C. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi, or D. A lightsaber? To take part in this quiz, you have to join our Discord server, link in the description below. Go to the Emming Gaming Quiz channel and cast your vote in the poll. The poll will be open for a week, and we will announce the winner at the start of next week's episode, so stay tuned. And once again, a disclaimer. This particular contest is open only to our Maldivian listeners. It's our first time trying out something like this, so we wanted to start small. Now, that said, I'm going to throw the question over to you, dear listeners. What do you think about the role of AI in gaming? Let us know in the comments below. Now, one more person I want to highlight before we close this off is Mika, who is working behind the scenes to make sure that the podcast goes smoothly as possible. Thank you, Mika. I see you. All right, anyway, do not forget to check us out on YouTube and Twitch, links below, and as well as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram handles also below. Thank you once again, and same to you, Nemui Ghost. Thank you once again, and we will see you in the next one. Ramadan Mubarak. And that's the end.